All right, today we're going to do a video on turf disease, lawn disease, and how you can prevent that or help prevent it with cultural practices and preventative fungicide applications. I am here in North Carolina, and the disease pressure is pretty extreme. Last year, the average humidity here was 77%. So that's pretty extreme. It does get very hot here and stays humid almost all year long. I'll give you a little PGR update while I'm out here. It is looking good, nice and tight. Growth's about stopped. So stick around here and I'll go over this stuff with you. It's going to be kind of a long video, so hang tight. All right, back at you here. So anytime I'm coming up on temps and humidity that is going to increase disease pressure, I'm thinking about a way to get the grass to dry as fast as possible. Most diseases start with 10 to 14 hours of continuous leaf wetness and not temps above 60 degrees. There are other diseases that, are in cooler weather, but being this video is going to release about the 1st of May, I'm going to cover their stuff that we're going to be getting into here this summer. So, I guess today pretty much we're going to talk about dollar spot, brown patch, gray leaf spot, and pythium for fescue. So when, like I mentioned, when I get into disease season, I'm trying to get the grass to dry as soon as possible, and there's some cultural practices that can help with this. One, well, it's not going to help the grass dry, but one thing you can do to help, kill some of this disease pressure is limiting the amount of nitrogen you apply in the spring. A lot of lush, fast growth, which nitrogen provides, depending on the source, it just makes a breeding ground for disease. Another one is cutting your grass shorter. Now, if you don't have irrigation, there's not much you can do, or a way to water. I mean, you got to keep your grass tall to shade the soil to make, to try to keep your grass alive during the heat. But if you've got irrigation, there's no reason to be mowing your yard at 4 inches. Just no reason whatsoever. I mow my grass year round anywhere from 2.5 to 3 inches. And I do have irrigation. If you don't want it that low, mow it at 3.5. But there's no reason to be 4 inches tall with a way to water. My advice would be between 2.5 and 3.5. The taller the grass is, the longer it's going to stay wet. So, typically, you've got dew falling at 8:30 that evening. then it's going to stay wet all the way through, 10, 11 o'clock. that morning. And if your grass is even taller, it's going to stay wetter even longer. It may not even dry any the whole day down in the canopy. I mean, the tops of the blades may be, you know, dry, but down in there, it's still going to be wet. So another way to do this is I rake my turf. I use it's not a pull behind dethatcher, but my mower, it's a front mount dethatcher, and I'm not dethatching my turf. I'm not even hitting the ground. All I'm doing is going about an inch to an inch and a half in the canopy normally, and it's just helping that turf stand up what's laying over, and it'll help thin it out a little bit. If you've got a small yard, you can go out there and get you a Groundskeeper 2 rake. Those are excellent little rakes. Sometimes I have to go rake spots myself, just, you know, if I'm not raking my whole yard. And I'll go out there and rake it. You know, if your grass is thick, there's also, you know, it's more of a chance of it staying wet longer. And that, you're raking that encourages, you know, it's going to stand it back up, and then you're going to go back and cut it, and it's going to encourage it to grow up instead of keep growing sideways if it's laying over. And I typically do that once before I do my PGR applications, and then when I come off PGR, which is sometime June-ish, just depending on the weather, I'll do it once a month from then on until through overseeding, until I get ready to overseed. So, I mean, if you're on, I should mention that, like, if you're on a PGR, you know, you need to wait till you come off of it before you start raking your turf. I mean, it does cause just a touch of stress, just depending on how deep you go, but it's well worth doing this. And we're not, like I mentioned, we're not digging into the soil. We're just lightly, it's just like combing your hair. You're just lightly combing it, just to stand the grass up and help thin it out just a little bit. So those are some cultural practices that can help prevent lawn disease. I mean, you know, there's always a chance of getting it, even doing this and preventative fungicide. There's still a chance. So we're going to get into these fungicides here. This is probably, this is going to stir up YouTube a little bit. There's a lot of folks that don't believe in applying preventative fungicide. And, you know, that's their opinion. I won't disagree that applying fungicide regularly it's going to hurt the efficiency of it some. I mean, absolutely it will, but, you know, there's ways around this, you know, doing this to help fight the resistance. So, you know, my goal for this and for you guys is, or you know, certainly myself, is to keep a nice stand of grass all year long. You know, that's my goal. I don't really look forward to doing renovations, so I want to keep a nice stand of turf year round and use the tools that are available to do that. I have never been associated with a golf course, which is 2 of them, that didn't apply a preventative fungicide. You know, the goal on a golf course is to keep good playing conditions and keep it visually pleasing. And, you know, if you got fungus all over the greens or something, that's going to hurt the playing conditions, and that's going to hurt you know, the visual of the golf course. So for residential lawn care, there's basically 4 different groups we can use. Group 1, the TM 4.5. Group 3, the propiconazole. group 11 azoxystrobin, and there's a group 4, which is a mefenoxam. There's others also included in that group as far as, different, like there's trifloxystrobin, which it's a group 11, but, azoxystrobin is a group 11. There's some other ones that's in like a group 3. So not all group 11 or group 3 are labeled for residential turf that I know of. I know there's a tebuconazole that's a group 3. It's not labeled for residential turf. I'm sure there's some in group 11s. But today what we're going to be covering is what you can get that's readily available that you can apply legally. So when we're dealing with fungicides, coverage is king. That means spray volume. What you're trying to do is you're trying to coat from the top of the leaf all the way down to the crown. These fungicides are Xylem systemic. So that means they move upward. So these things, wherever they contact the point of entry on the plant, these fungicides can only move upward through the xylem, and then they move outward. So they cannot move downward. So if you're not getting coverage of the plant, complete coverage, what's going to happen if you're just coating the tips of the leaves and then in a couple days you come and mow the tips off, being this can only move upward, is your protection's gone. So the better coverage, the further down you can get down in the canopy, because the grass grows up. So let me mention that again. If you're just barely coating the tips of the leaves, and then in a couple days you're coming by and mowing the tips off, the protection's gone, being this stuff can only move upward. Now, if you was to be spraying at a high volume and you was getting it down to the crown of the plant and covering the whole leaf, it would all be protected. You could still mow. So that's just, that explanation is my opinion on that. I mean, there's no opinion as far as these fungicides. They're systemic and they move upward. They don't move downward. The only, the phosphite, we'll get into that though. What I like to do when I'm spraying these, I do spray at 2 gallons per 1,000 square feet, so I do get excellent coverage. But, if I'm azoxystrobin, propiconazole, mefenoxam, if I'm using those, I'll spray late in the evening, let it sit overnight, and then hit it with a 2 to 3 minute cycle. That way it'll wash it down to the crown, and then, it'll get into the soil some. Because the roots can take it up, but remember, it's only going to move upwards. In my opinion, I like to let this stuff dry or sit on the leaf 6 to 12 hours. And then, if you want to water it in, lightly water it in. Running a 2 minute cycle, that's going to basically do nothing but wash it down to the crown. And that'll, that can be your coverage also. So there's soil-borne diseases and there's foliar diseases. Brown patch, for instance, it is a soil-borne disease. So you could actually take azoxystrobin if you was targeting brown patch, you could spray azoxystrobin and then water it in straight away. Same with propiconazole. You could spray it and water it in right away. Mefanoxam for Pythium. You can spray it and water it in right away. The only thing I don't like to water in, I like to completely let dry, is the TM 4.5, and that's basically for gray leaf spot. It does control some dollar spot, and we'll get into that now. So what I do is I start off with a group 3, which is the propiconazole. I normally start that around the 1st of May, just depending on temps. I actually have applied a preventative. I done it a few days ago. So dollar spot, this is the reason why I'm applying a group 3. Azoxystrobin does not treat dollar spot, and there have been studies shown that azoxystrobin can make dollar spot worse. So dollar spot, propiconazole, if you don't want to apply a preventative fungicide, then you can use propiconazole if you wait and get fungus. The TM 4.5, it is excellent on dollar spot also. Just know that the use rates on TM 4.5, the yearly rates, are extremely low for that. Dollar spot, like I mentioned, it normally here in North Carolina, it's a May and June thing. It can start with low temps in the 50s and go up to high temps 90. Normally after 90 degrees, it's not an issue. It can happen even in July, but typically here in North Carolina, it's a May and June thing, and you don't typically see it in July here, but it can happen. So what like I mentioned, I'll start off with propiconazole. What I'll do is I'll spray that every 14 days, and I'll spray it 2 times, 2 consecutive times. And I spray my fungicide on a 14-day schedule, preventative schedule. So I do the low rate every 14 days, and I'm doing I start off with the propiconazole. When we get into June, that's when the brown patch fires up. So, I'll typically switch to azoxystrobin. Let me mention this, propiconazole is a group 3, azoxystrobin is a group 11. Those are 2 different groups, 2 different modes of action. So we're rotating those to help fight the resistance. What you don't want to do is continue spraying the same fungicide, 3, 4, 5 times in a row. Me, if I'm spraying a single fungicide, I'll spray it 2 times and then rotate it to a different one, or I will add another one in. So if I was using propiconazole, I'll add in azoxystrobin, and that'll help fight resistance. But back to the brown patch. The brown patch here in North Carolina, like I said, it normally starts sometime in June, and with low temps in the 70s, highs in the 90s, and 10 to 12 hours of leaf wetness. So if I do happen to get dollar spot in June, I'll have to come out with a propiconazole, or just let it be. Typically, you can fix dollar spot quite often with just a little bit of nitrogen. And it's not on fescue. It's not a real damaging turf disease. I mean, it is ugly, but typically you won't lose any grass from that. And brown patch. I mean, normally I haven't seen any fescue really just totally die because of brown patch. I guess it can happen, but like dollar spot on bent grass greens, it is very damaging, and bent grass is very prone to it. So is KBG. So if you guys got KBG, just know dollar spot, KBG is very prone to dollar spot. Going into, let me finish this up right here. So as I mentioned, I run propiconazole, and then I'll switch to azoxystrobin. Going into July, we're still in the brown patch, and we're getting into gray leaf spot. So in July, what I'll typically do is I'll mix propiconazole back in with the azoxystrobin. So I'm not running only azoxystrobin, 4 times in a row or whatever. I've got another mode of action in propiconazole back mixed in with it. So, still got brown patch in July, and then we're getting in the gray leaf spot, and that's a banger on fescue. It will wipe it out. So, gray leaf spot, it can start at 65 and go up to 95. It does require 14 hours of leaf wetness to initiate. So if you're getting a lot of rain, constant rain, it's going to be a good chance you could have some gray leaf spot. Very, very good chance. And what normally I just run azoxystrobin and propiconazole preventatively, and if I do happen to have an outbreak of gray leaf spot, I'll spray it with the TM 4.5. The TM 4.5 is very, very good on gray leaf spot, but the yearly use rate on it is very low. If I know there's a bunch of rain coming, I may throw out the propiconazole and mix the TM 4.5 with the azoxystrobin and do it every 14 days. But like I mentioned, the yearly use rate on TM 4.5 is very, very low. So keep that in mind. Make sure you read the labels on this. July, August, September, there's always a chance of Pythium, and that is a very, very devastating turf disease. I actually had some last year at the end of July and August. It rained 13 inches from middle July till I guess about the middle of August. So within a month it rained 13 inches. I do run phosphate. It will help prevent Pythium, but it can still happen. Like this plant food stuff, there's studies from Rutgers. All you scientific guys, you want studies, go on Plant Food Company website. It'll show you the studies of phosphate from Rutgers. If you want to argue with Rutgers, then, go ahead. But I still did get some Pythium with that amount of rain and the humidity. So to handle that, my choice is mefenoxam. Luckily, I knew what Pythium looks like, and I caught it very early, and I went out and I went and done a blanket app of mefenoxam over the whole yard. Mine was confined to one area, and it's where the water runs off my driveway. And typically that's where you'll see that, where you had water standing or water runoff, and it will run. It'll start off in little small circles. It could be about the size of a tennis ball, maybe even a golf ball, and it'll look kind of greasy looking, real kind of a golden brown. It'll just be a spot. And if you go out early morning, you'll see a lot of mycelium on it, which is, for redneck terms for me, that's cobwebs. We call it cobwebs. It'd be real thick, cotton-like cobwebs. But I do sometimes, if I know it's going to rain a lot, I will apply the mefenoxam, even using the phosphate, to do it preventative. Last year I didn't do it and it got me. And this year, I'm probably, come middle July, I'm probably going to apply some mefenoxam preventatively. They say azoxystrobin, it's on the label, Pythium, but I haven't never seen much luck with that. I mean, personally, I've not seen any luck with it for treating Pythium. Might help prevent it some, but as far as, curing it, mefenoxam, there's some others, but, mefenoxam is extremely expensive. There's another one called Banol. It's very, very expensive also. And Pythium, it can start at 65 degrees, and, it's not too typical, but it can happen. Normally it starts highs above 85, and 12 to 14 hours of continuous leaf wetness. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to cover all this stuff. Actually, I had to put some notes down, and I'm probably still leaving out stuff in this. I gotta try to keep my videos decently short and not ramble on for an hour about doing this. But a good rule of thumb is to take your low temperature and your high temperature and add them together. And if you see 150, you've got a good amount of disease pressure fixing to happen. 140, it's moderate. 150 is pretty extreme. Anything 150 and above, it's very extreme. Basically, what all this boils down to is watching the weather, watching the extended forecast. You've got to watch the weather so you'll know what conditions are coming up. Different things are better on certain stuff. Like the TM 4.5, brown patch is labeled for it, but it's not very effective. It's pretty sorry at treating brown patch. So why use TM 4.5 when azoxystrobin is excellent on brown patch? Propiconazole is better than the TM 4.5. But for gray leaf spot, TM 4.5 is the best. Propiconazole, it's labeled for it, but it sucks. So, and I should mention this earlier. One big thing is watering. If you're going to water early morning. If you can start at 4 o'clock, that's the best time, and end by 10. In a previous video, I mentioned, I'd start at 2:45 because of the size of my yard, and it stops at like 9:05. But don't be out there watering at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's never going to have time to dry before the dew falls, and then that's just going to add on to the amount of time it's going to stay wet. So do not water at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. if you have to do it, if it's really, really hot, and if you got to do like a light syringe, you know, I typically, if I do one, I do it at 2 or 3 o'clock, and just a light one, 2 or 3 minutes. That way it'll have time to dry before the dew sets in. So I hope and pray this video wasn't too boring, and I tried to explain this. It is very hard explaining all this stuff and doing a video. I mean, some of these folks are really good at doing this, and I'm just not that great at doing it, but hopefully I did a pretty good job. I can type it out a whole lot better than I can speak it. So hopefully you learned something, and it wasn't too boring. But I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The likes and the subscribes, I mean, it helps me a lot. And that's what keeps me doing this for now. I mean, this takes a lot of work doing this stuff. You know, after I film it, I got to go edit it. So, you know, there's several hours involved in doing this. And, you know, the more views, the more likes, the more subscribers I get, the better it makes me feel. So that's it. We'll see you in the next video. I appreciate you watching.